you come across Grabnar the Destroyer. Stunning strike. Does a 9 make it? No, he's stunned. We win. Yay! Welcome, scholars, storytellers, and fellow babysitter DMs. This is the Level Up Corner, led by yours truly, Wizo, as we delve into all the tips and tricks about Dungeons & Dragons. Today's topic is how to make great bosses in D&D. Now, there are two important elements that you need to keep in mind when creating bosses in D&D. The first is the setup, and the second is the execution. Now, you can't have a boss just appear out of nowhere. You could maybe get away with that for some random encounters that try to enhance the environment, create tension, or just are a surprise because they're an assassin or some other sneaky type of monster, and it fits them. But bosses, they require build-up and should be used sparingly. Sometimes I don't even have a boss in a campaign if it's going to be a very short one, although that's rare. Usually I at least have one. But I might not even have a second in these campaigns, maybe encompassing 5, 6, or even 7 levels, and there might just be one boss. There could be a bit more, of course, but you need to make sure that that boss is built up. The boss knows of the players. They know what the players are up to because the players have had to constantly be a thorn in that person's side. And the players have had to deal with thwarting many of this individual's plans. It could be where it started out that, they disrupted a small drug run here and there at lower levels, and it slowly built up to them trying to crumple the empire that this boss has made, this black market. And it goes by quests after quests after quests, and they keep hearing about this boss. They keep hearing in the foreshadowing of Grabnar or whatnot, this individual who is always hidden. They find that people start to slowly have more information on him, but is the information true? Some say he's a human who keeps his mask closed. Others say that he's an orc because of his build and everything else. No one truly knows, and you can add a sense of mystery to it. Make sure that you have this boss at least somewhat in all of the players' missions, or if not all of them, most of them. This way the players will develop some grudges or galvanize themselves to stop this individual because he's causing all the problems. Him, her, it, whatever. And in addition to the boss being a little bit mysterious, slowly they can start to learn things. Slowly they can start to learn that Grabnar is not a magic user, but instead makes people think that he is because of the magic items that he wields. Instead, he is a grand warlord who commands many individuals and has fought in many different arenas and fronts over the years. He is able to hold his own, and if the party tries to face him, likelihood of success is small at best. At least, that's what you can make it sound like. You slowly give more information about the individual that they are going against, and that individual should also slowly learn more about the players. After all, if they bust a small drug ring, who cares? He doesn't care about these gnats. That's why they have minions, to deal with these pests. And the players are only brought to his attention when they start to really become a problem. Start to become something that he has to take care of. And this foreshadowing, this build-up, is important in making bosses memorable, in making bosses interesting, and in making the fights what you are looking for. Now, many of us Dungeon Masters do understand that bosses need to have build-up, and many of us do this. There are many different ways to do this, and we can make a whole video based upon foreshadowing and how to make the build-up be amazing. But this is something we actually naturally do a bit more and do well. The problem exists with execution. See, in D&D there is something that we don't really consider when we run a lot of encounters with monsters, because it's not that big of a deal, if they face 4 goblins, then they're going to fight a little bit differently than a single creature. But if they fight a single creature, it's usually a monster, which has high constitution or some other aspects to it. And the fights are different, but not anything that sticks in your mind. See, when it comes to execution, us DMs have had players fight multiple different monsters before. We've had them go into different situations where they have to solve puzzles and everything else. It's not usually the players versus one creature. And if they do, it's a creature that, is dumb, has some obvious weaknesses, whatever. But they're not Grabnar. They're not this amazing individual who is able to overcome all these tricks to make a good fight. At least, that's what we think. Until the players do something or you roll poorly. And that can cause a problem, because we are not as conscious of action economy as we should be. Now, if you have one individual versus five attacks or 5 turns are greater than one. I know it's a math problem that we forget many times as DMs. And when we try to have that one individual face all 5 party members, you forget that you have 5 people trying to throw tricks at you, trying to make it so that your boss is dead. Now, this has been a problem for the longest time in D&D. And in 5th edition, they added something to make it a bit more fair and balanced. And that is legendary actions. Now, legendary actions are a response to the action economy problem. Instead of having a strong creature get 1 turn while the players get 5 or 4 or 6 or whatever, you have legendary actions to try to make it so that you have extra turns or extra abilities at the end of players' turns. And while legendary actions can theoretically work, they rarely do. Take the vampire, for example. If you look at the vampire's legendary actions, they are absolutely pathetic. If you also take a look at what other legendary actions do, let's say a dragon, they are able to get 3 extra attacks, which is great, but there's a problem. See, in a boss fight with legendary actions, you still have 1 turn. So that means you're using all your legendary actions to hit the person in front of you, which means all the players need to do is have someone go up, tank, while you try to spank them, but they actually spank you from all their damage, hitting from other sides and everything else. It is awful, and it doesn't solve the issue. What you need to do in combat is introduce extra variables. You need to make it so that the players need to think. They can't just put the person who has the highest AC up and be like, all right, Shield of Faith. We're putting Shield of Faith on you. We're also going to make sure that you take this potion. Do you have Shield? All right, you have Shield. We're just going to stack all the AC items on you and go fight Grabnar. He's a warrior, so he's not going to be able to do anything. That is a boring fight. So you need to be able to do something else. Legendary actions also have the problem of making it so that you don't have reactions or movement. This, once again, encourages the problem of tank and spank. That is why legendary actions can work, but I'm not the biggest fan. Instead, there are 3 other ways that I've found how you can solve the action economy problem. The first is with lieutenants. You have extra minions. The boss himself is not the greatest. No, Grabnar is a warlord. He has lieutenants underneath him, and that's why it's not just Grabnar you need to worry about, but his 2 lieutenants, lefty and righty. Why not? Name him whatever you want. But he has his 2 lieutenants, and they are also very strong. They may have different abilities as well. Lefty may be a debuff, while righty is like the hammer that smacks. And Grabnar is actually like a shield warrior, someone who is able to take a lot of damage. And this way you have 3 actions versus 5. And those 3 can actually be balanced fairly well. And it makes it so that Grabnar himself is not the greatest threat, but the army that he's built. So minions, lieutenants, are a great way to add extra action to the action economy, and they're introducing extra elements. You can't just tank and spank, because even if Grabnar is tanking and spanking that other guy, just fighting, there's also 2 other people who are able to flank, who are able to use different abilities, who are able to attack those vulnerable casters. It makes the fight a lot more messy, rather than this clean, polished algorithm that the players have worked out. And even if your players do something that turns Grabnar into a fish or whatever, he has lieutenants that can just shoot an arrow at him as one of their attacks, get him unpolymorphed, or deal with a concentration caster by breaking it, by hitting them 1,000 times, so that they will lose that concentration check eventually. Now, as a variant to lieutenants, you can have summons. The big boss can actually summon creatures. And these summoned creatures could even be a bonus action rather than a main action. Once you do this, you summon, let's say, an earth elemental, and it's in the back, and it's hitting the wizard. Well, now they have to address an earth elemental. The earth elemental has its own initiative. They can't just stun Grabnar because he has other summons that are there, although they do need to stop him from consistently summoning. Summons is a very interesting way to add to the battlefield because it makes a timer. It makes it so that you have to deal with the boss, and even if you kill the boss, you can make it so that the summons persist. So the players really need to go, and it's this hectic thing where they can't just sit back and tank and spank and, lazily, la-di-da-di, just spend resources to, stun so he can't hurt us. No, they need to kill him. They need to burn that boss down. So you have added a new element to the game when you have summons as our, third way. Second if you take out legendary actions. The last way, the most difficult way to have your players fight a memorable boss, is to give multiple initiatives. Now, multiple initiatives are a better reaction to the problem of action economy than legendary actions, in my opinion, and here's why. Legendary actions, you can do at the end of anyone's turn. It can be dynamic, it can be kind of cool, but you don't usually have movement, and you don't usually have as many reactions to react to the player's attacks. With multiple initiatives, you have 1, multiple reactions, 2, multiple times that you can move, 3, multiple different abilities you could have, because you shouldn't just give, let's say, Grabnar 2 initiatives. You should give him his Warlord initiative and his Warrior initiative. What do? Well, the Warlord makes it so that you have different abilities. You debuff people, you cause others to be in fright, poisoned, intimidation, paralyzed with fear, something along those lines, to where it's not directly damage, but it changes the shape of the battlefield. You can also make the Warlord initiative to where if he uses a bonus action, he's able to move and not invoke attacks of opportunity. He can now move around, and that movement, making the game not just be standard tank and spank, is extraordinarily important to making the fight memorable. Lastly, when you have that other initiative, you have a different set of circumstances that will come into play, more damage. And the players can tell when those initiatives are coming up. They can tell we're going to be hit this round or we're going to have to deal with debuffs, and it makes them think more rather than legendary actions, which are just, oh, by the way, now this happens. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. All right, whatever. And it's not as much thought is put into it. That is why we have more, why I personally prefer multiple initiatives. I would recommend 2 to 3. 3 if you have a large party between 5 and 6 players, or if it's an extremely powerful boss. I'd only give a 4th initiative if there are ways to take out that initiative, and the players could either do that pre-fight, or it's blatantly obvious during the fight, and you can bring him down or it down to 1 initiative, or if you're really ridiculous, 2 initiatives. But that is the only time that you should get to 4 initiatives with this pre-thought out method. Now, even with multiple initiatives, there is the problem, again, in the beginning of just being stunned or polymorphed or banished, and then you're completely screwed. For legendary actions, they solve this, by giving legendary resistances. You just have 3 nopes. Now, you can keep this with multiple initiatives, or you can just make it so that this boss is ridiculously good at saves. Is there a chance that they will fail? Yes, there's a low chance. But if it happens, then the players have earned it. They have taken the risk, and they have won the gamble. And that's also really what D&D is about. You can tell them, it's not going to be likely that it'll succeed, but you can try. Just like if someone's trying to make another skill check that's unlikely to succeed, but they keep rolling nat 20s. That's what D&D is about. So you can choose to not have legendary resistances and instead give high saving throws as well to your boss. With all this, I hope that I have helped you in the 2 factors that make great D&D bosses. First is foreshadowing, just a little bit to help you out there, since I'm sure you're quite proficient with it. And the second is execution, since that is the thing that we have a lot of problems on as a DM. We have a lot of problems with making sure that fight is actually memorable and interesting. And I hope that with my analysis on the 4 different ways that you can make a boss, you have got some ideas and you figured out how to make your boss a little bit more interesting rather than just, I failed. All right, good game. But what do you think? How do you make D&D bosses memorable? Is it just with the execution of how to craft them, or is there an environment that's put into play? Is there something else that you do? Maybe you always make personal grudges with your bosses. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like this video and ding that notification bell and subscribe so that you can stay informed, so that we can reach more people and have an even bigger discussion on all these wonderful D&D topics. Lastly, always remember that your players love and appreciate you. And keep rolling, my friends. Keep rolling.